Hi everyone, welcome back to the Spring Garden Series. We are having so much fun growing our spring vegetable gardens together all the way from seed to harvest. And I know a lot of you have jumped in with us and are having fun and really excited about growing your vegetables. Well, on last week's video, we planted our very first tomato plant of the season right here in this red container. And it was 7 tips on how to get huge harvest from your tomatoes. A lot of you really enjoyed that video, but several of you had questions on tomato supports. So on today's video, I'm going to share with you 4 of my favorite quick, simple, inexpensive DIY tomato supports. Now, several of you had questions about this particular tomato trellis. This is not a DIY trellis, but this is called the Titan Tomato Arch by Gardeners, and it's pretty handy. It's very sturdy, and the little rings here just unsnap so that you can move them up and down as your tomato plant grows. So I'll put a link for that in the video description. But to get started, let's head over and check out one of my very favorite tomato trellises. Come on over. As I show you the trellises today, I'm actually going to be planting some tomatoes as well, which is always a ton of fun. And I'm going to use the 7 tomato planting tips that we learned in last week's video. So if you missed that video or any of the Spring Garden series, you definitely want to go back and watch from the beginning so you know exactly how to get your vegetables planted. One of my favorite and certainly the easiest, most inexpensive DIY trellises is this ladder mesh trellis. A lot of you have seen me growing on this over the years, growing cucumbers, peas, compact watermelon, but it does also work well for growing tomatoes. Usually the smaller, lighter varieties work best on the ladder mesh trellis. Today I'm going to plant the large red cherry from the Tomato Garden Seed Collection, but before I do that, let me just share with you a little bit about the ladder mesh. Now, this is something you're not going to find in the gardening section at the hardware store. You want to look in the masonry department. And I got this idea actually from Gary over at the Rusted Garden. And what it is a 10-foot piece. It's called ladder mesh, and they actually use it to reinforce concrete. And this is 2 pieces hooked together to make an arch. And it's just connected in the middle here with a couple of cable ties. And then what I did is put a stake into the ground to give it a little bit of stability, and it makes a really nice lightweight trellis for growing lighter types of vegetables. Now the cool thing about this is it's super inexpensive. Each piece of ladder mesh is only around $3 or $3.50 depending on where you live. You can find it at most hardware stores. It's readily available, and if you don't see it in the masonry department, make sure you ask at the contractor's desk, which is what I had to do. So super easy, very quick, simple, inexpensive. So let's go ahead and get our tomato plant in the ground here. And the large red cherry is perfect because it's smaller varieties of tomatoes, so it'll be perfect for this lightweight trellis. And I've already got my planting hole dug. I dug it nice and deep so that that tomato seedling can sink down deep in the soil and then send out its extensive root system from the stem. But first off, we're going to add a handful of compost just to kind of loosen up the soil a little bit and give the tomato some nice amendments to start off with, and a handful of the Vermistera worm tea. And all this I covered in last week's video so that you know exactly how to get your tomatoes planted. And I've got 3 little seedlings in the pot here, but I'm just going to pull one out to put in the hole so that they don't get overcrowded and compete for nutrients. And then I've got a couple other little tomato seedlings that we can plant in another location. These little seedlings were started from seed indoors on February 7th. They're about 6 inches tall, so hopefully that'll help you gauge about how quickly your seedlings should be growing in about 6 or 8 weeks. So right now I'm just backfilling the hole here with the soil that I dug out. And right now the tomato plant is a little bit in the shade, which is actually good for the first couple of days, as sometimes it goes through a little bit of transplant shock. It'll perk up in no time and be growing up this trellis and creating a nice little tomato arch here. Just go ahead and tampen that down. And I'm going to mulch the top with some leaves. Keep the moisture in. Add some organic matter to the soil as it breaks down over time. And as the tomato plant grows, what I'll do is just kind of weave it in and out of this ladder mesh as it climbs up the trellis. When you plant tomatoes, you always want to feed them to get them off to a good start, so it has lots of energy to climb up this trellis. So I'm feeding it with my usual combination of Vermistera worm tea. Gets it off to a nice healthy start. And then with the Good Dirt plant food, has good nutrients in it, especially the nitrogen, which helps encourage the green leafy growth. Now, one of the secrets to growing lots of tomatoes with huge harvests is to water deeply. So you can see I'm watering here at the base of the plant, letting it puddle up, and then the water will soak down to the roots so the roots get a good nice feeding. And then water again. Let it soak in. The last thing here to get my tomato planted on the ladder mesh trellis is to label. A cute little DIY label is a simple wine cork labeled with the tomato plant name, stuck on the end of a skewer, and then popped here on my plant. Got our large red cherry on this side. Now, one thing that's kind of fun to do with a ladder mesh trellis is to plant a small cherry type tomato on either side of the trellis, so that when they grow up, they eventually meet in the middle and you have a whole tomato tunnel here. Second quick, simple, inexpensive tomato support or cage is this concrete remesh cage. So this one is actually made out of concrete remesh sheets. So it's very, very simple. Again, you can find those concrete remesh sheets at the hardware store, in the masonry department. And basically it makes a cage that's very, very sturdy, perfect for large sized tomatoes. It's about 2 feet in diameter and it's close to about 6 or 7 feet tall, and you can kind of adjust it to your planting space. So what you do to make this cage is you stack 2 of the concrete remesh sheets together, kind of overlap them here by one section to give them stability, form them in the shape of a circle, and attach them with wire or zip ties. So super strong and sturdy cage, great for full-size tomatoes. Today I'm going to pop my Golden Jubilee tomato, which is a beautiful yellow tomato, in my spring garden seed collection and in my tomato seed collection right here in the planting hole. Already have the hole dug, already have the amendments in. We're just going to grab our little tomato seedling. I think this one here is looking pretty good. And here we do have 2 little seedlings. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to kind of pull the seedlings apart. So we're just planting one in the hole here. Look at those roots. Those look absolutely amazing. The worm tea is doing its job. One thing I really like about this particular tomato cage is that the holes here are nice and big, so your hands fit through easily for pruning and for harvesting. Not quite as inexpensive as the ladder mesh. I think each piece of concrete remesh costs around $8, but it's definitely a cage that will last you for many, many years. I think I've had this one here for 4 or 5 years, and it hasn't really shown anywhere. We've got our nice deep hole dug. I'm going to put my little tomato seedling down in here. And what I like to do too is put a stake right in the middle of this cage, because when the tomato plant starts out, it might need a little bit of extra support because the cage is so wide. About right, so I'll go ahead and backfill it. You'll definitely want to grab one of my tomato seed collections. I am running a sale this weekend, 15% off with the code GARDEN. Just going to throw some mulch on top. Before I share trellis number 3, we're going to hear from Maygan, who's following along with the Spring Garden series, and she's gardening in Ohio. So take it away, Maygan.
Hey CaliKim and this awesome garden community. My name's Maygan and I'm from Southwest Ohio, Zone 6A. I am so excited to be following along in this year's Spring Garden series. So I am downstairs with my seedlings set up, and one problem I have faced is fungus gnats. So I picked up these sticky traps that CaliKim recommended, and thank you so much for the suggestion. It looks like they're already working and I just got these put in today. One thing I learned last year from gardening is when you buy transplants from the garden center, you're limited on the selection of what types of plants you can grow. So this year I'm starting almost everything from seed, and I have a ton of different tomatoes and peppers, and I'm so excited to try some new varieties this year. It looks like my tomatoes are getting their first set of true leaves, and the peppers are finally starting to germinate after about 2 to 3 weeks. Now our last frost date is in about a month, so there's not much going on outside in my garden, and I'm getting ready to plant lettuce this weekend. But let's go upstairs and check out the container garden. I'm out here on my patio with my Smart Pots container garden, and I got some violas planted to get a pop of color this spring. I have potatoes planted and some sugar snap peas that are just now starting to sprout. Within the next couple of months, this is going to be full of color, and I hope you have a very happy growing season. Bye everyone.
Isn't it fun to hear how gardeners all over are growing their vegetables? Maygan, your seedling setup looks amazing. Great job taking care of those fungus gnats. And wow, you are going to have an amazing, colorful patio of vegetables in those Smart Pots. The third DIY quick, simple, inexpensive tomato support is an inverted tomato cage. Now, regular tomato cages are just too small and they don't provide enough support for your tomato. They're too short. Your tomato usually will outgrow them. But one little method I've been using over the past couple of years to kind of make a really quick support is by using 2 tomato cages put together. And what you do is you put one in your container or your garden bed, and then you invert a second one and then tie it together with cable ties. And something that's kind of fun to do is just to connect it at the top with a little bit of thick twine. You can even find some kind of little garden decor here to kind of stick on the top. I think that would be really fun. So this particular tomato cage is perfect for containers. It's very easily removed, which I'm actually going to do right now because I'm going to add some fresh potting mix to plant our tomato in. So yeah, if you're growing in a small space, use the inverted tomato cage for a very quick and simple trellis. Now, one thing is, when you're growing in containers from season to season, don't throw out your old container soil. You can definitely refresh it, and I'm going to do that here. First, I'm actually going to remove my drip irrigation. So I'm actually growing this in one of the Smart Pot's new colors. This is so pretty. It's a violet color. It really makes things pop in the garden. And these are now available over at smartpots.com. Unfold the edges of the Smart Pots here and add some fresh new good dirt soil. Now, I've grown in good dirt potting mix for years, and it has tons of wonderful nutrients for your plants. It doesn't get compacted either, and you can grow in it for many, many seasons. So I'm going to add a couple inches of fresh potting mix here. And good dirt is an organic potting mix. It's made with peat moss that is sustainably harvested. It's a very fluffy type of soil. It has lots of good organic nutrients for your plants. Just going to moisten it up a little bit. You always want to plant in pre-moistened soil so your plants have the water they need to get off to a good start here. When you're growing tomatoes in a container, especially a full-size tomato, you want to get a nice big container, at least 10 to 15, even 20 gallons is better, because your tomatoes need enough space to grow all those wonderful roots. So it can take up all the nutrients and grow you lots and lots of tomatoes. You want to mix that potting soil in so that it gets down into the container and into the roots of the tomato. Now, one thing I love about growing tomatoes in containers is it's just so simple to get them planted. Just going to dig out my little planting hole here right in the middle. And good dirt soil is nice and loose, so all I need to use are my hands to get a nice deep hole. Actually, I had a tomato in here last season. Look at those roots. It's one great thing about growing tomatoes in Smart Pots is the fabric is aerated, so it grows absolutely beautiful roots, and the roots don't get root bound and circle around. It's just a nice fibrous root mass, so it can easily take up the nutrients and grow lots and lots of tomatoes to harvest. Got my tomato planted, and I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the drip irrigation. Really especially want to make sure that you mulch the top of your containers, because containers definitely dry out quicker than your in-ground garden, and that will really help reduce the watering needs. Now that we have our tomato planted, we're going to install our cage, and it's really best if you install your cages at the time of planting. That way you don't disturb the roots, and the tomatoes have all the support they need right away when they first start growing. Now, I really do like this cage because it is super quick and simple. So if you're a busy person, don't have a lot of time to spend making cages, this is a great one. And I got these colored cages at Home Depot, I believe last year. So they really do make a really nice color contrast with the colored Smart Pots. Fourth DIY tomato trellis is a garden arch made out of a cattle panel. Now this one, you guys, is for your giant tomatoes. It's super, super sturdy. Can you imagine this whole tunnel filled with tomatoes for a tomato tunnel as you walk through? I just think it would be so, so beautiful. Now, a couple of months ago, we built this garden arch especially for our grapevine. Let me give you a little sneak peek here, guys. The grapevine is growing. I do have a little tomato growing on this cattle panel garden arch as well. This tomato plant actually overwintered, and it's growing right behind it here in a Smart Pot's long raised bed. And what I've been doing is just weaving it through the little squares here in the cattle panel and it makes a perfect support for a tomato plant as well. So go back and watch our previous video on how to build a garden arch from a cattle panel for exactly how to build it. A couple of different ways you can use a garden arch to grow tomatoes. You could plant 2 raised beds on either side, arch it over in the middle, or you could also pop some containers of tomatoes along one side or the other, and then arch your tomatoes up that way. So it's very versatile and it's so sturdy, it lasts for years. To close off the video, I want to show you one of my very favorite tomatoes. It's the Tiny Tim Dwarf tomato. A lot of you have grown this along with me over the years. It's growing here in a CaliKim orange 5-gallon container with handles. These are brand new and they'll be available on my website within a couple of weeks. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And the Tiny Tim is just so cute. It only grows to about 2 feet tall and it's easy to support with a small little tomato cage from the garden center. Works great in small space gardens and patios. And you can find seeds in the container garden seed collection over at CaliKimGardenandHome.com. Comment below, let me know what tomato supports and trellises you're using for your tomatoes. If you haven't yet started growing tomatoes yet, jump in with us, go back and watch the Spring Garden series from the very beginning, and grab my book, Organic Gardening for Everyone, along with a tomato seed collection or a Spring Garden seed collection. When you purchase them in the bundle, you can save $5, and make sure you use the code GARDEN to get 15% off through Monday, April 5th. Thanks so much for growing along with me. We'll see you on the next video.